Hey everybody, it's Pastor Bob, and I want to welcome you to this week's edition of Calvary Fellowship Backstage, where we're looking at some of the things that we're studying in the book of Revelation. We're studying Revelation on Sunday mornings, but there's some things that just don't get covered because we run out of time. And so I'm using this forum to be able to inform you, share some things that are still in my heart that I wanted to communicate to you, but haven't been able to just because of the lack of time that we have on Sunday. In particular, what I want to do in this edition and in the next couple of editions of Calvary Backstage is talk to you about the 7 churches in Revelation found in chapters 2 and 3. Now, one of the things that we've talked about is that Revelation 2 and 3, that these 7 churches represent church history in totality, and that also the very name of the church speaks of the very issue that Jesus wants to talk to them about. But there's something else that I haven't been able to share that I've wanted to, and that is that when Jesus introduces the church, when he says to the angel of the church in Ephesus, let's say, he gives a description of himself that he pulls from chapter 1 when John the apostle sees him, and he says, and I saw one, and he just gives this description of Jesus. He gives a particular description. He pulls this one element, one or two elements out of that description to talk about this specific church, to the specific church. The question is why? Let me read to you the introduction that Jesus gives to the church at Ephesus. He says, to the angel of the church at Ephesus write, these things says he who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks in the midst of the 7 golden lampstands. Now, why would he have that be the description? Saying, instead of saying, hey, the person writing to you is Jesus, he says it's the one who's holding the 7 stars in his hand, the one who's walking in the midst of the 7 golden lampstands. Well, what we learn is that the 7 lampstands represent the 7 churches in Revelation. They represent the church collectively. But why would he address this church in Ephesus this way? Well, if you remember, at the church at Ephesus, what was the issue? What was the correction that Jesus had to give? It was that they were lacking in love. He says, you've actually left your first love. So Jesus is essentially creating a picture that they've kind of walked away from where Jesus is. The very midst that Jesus is hanging out in is in the church. And so somehow they've walked away, they've left, and he's calling them from the very midst of the 7 churches to come back. And the thing that I love about these pictures is that it really does give us a wonderful picture of what Jesus is trying to explain. Here's another one that I think is amazing. In verse 8 of chapter 2, he says, to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these things says the first and the last, who was dead and came to life. Now why would Jesus describe himself that way? It's because the church at Smyrna, if you were at the study a couple of weeks ago, it's that church was experiencing tremendous persecution. So what does Jesus do? He refers to himself as the one who was dead and came back to life, identifying with that church, saying, listen, I know what it is to be persecuted. I know what it is to suffer. Why? Because I suffered. I suffered beforehand. I suffered when I went to the cross. I died, and then I came back to life, encouraging them that if they would overcome, that they would experience the blessing of resurrection as well as we experience that eternally for believers. And so it's these pictures that Jesus gives us to identify, to also give a picture of even his correction. In the next episode of CF Backstage, we'll talk about the next 2 churches as we look at the church at Pergamos, the church of Thyatira. And if you find this to be helpful, let me encourage you to forward it to a friend. The website is youtube.com/user/CF Backstage, and you can send that to whomever you want. If you think that these things have been helpful, you can check out our website and all of our Revelation messages at calvarywired.com. We look forward to seeing you next time.